Hi everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. I know, the title is super clickbaity, but please hear me out. I have a good reason to say so. I will put the map update a little bit later this video, so just check the timestamps if you're just here for the map update. And I will actually start with the discussion because I want to answer the question in the title. So we on this channel discuss quite a lot of times about the military problems of Russia that is struggling. However, the second aspect that we need to keep in mind is the pressure, both political and economical, on Russia. This is important because you have voiced, for example, very valid opinions that even if Russia is expelled from Ukraine by force, that Russia might just continuing firing missiles at Ukraine, and it's a completely valid threat. This indeed can happen. So that's why it is important to keep up the pressure on Russia despite the effort, because it needs to be a complex solution if we want a long-term peace perspective on our continent. So what do we hear? And we're hearing that Russia is having huge problems with their economy. On the 1st of January, Russia has reported that they had to deduct 38.1 billion US dollars in a month from their national welfare fund. It was 186.5 billion and it was reduced by 38.1 in 1 month. Obviously, Russia will not deduct as much every month, but this shows that their budget is not coming together. And this is happening because the oil price cap that European nations have enforced, as well as some of the oil embargo, is working, and it's working really, really bad for Russia. While they might get like a little bit tiny sliver of profits transferring to India, they would be getting normal, well, okay profits if they would just pump their oil to Europe, because they would use pipes or trains, so it will be kind of cheap to transport. But transporting from ships by the Baltic Sea is actually incredibly expensive compared to the other methods. And Russia doesn't have pipes to India, and pipes don't materialize like this over a year. So Russia is now in a very bad position because it cannot really sell their oil. India is requiring like a 25% discount on their prices, and their budget was estimating that the price of oil and the profits from oil will be so much higher. And this is really problematic because at the tempo that Russia is going right now, there are economists that are estimating that by the end of the year, Russia can literally run out of their savings, run out of money. So if Russia will not end this war, it will be in a really dire economical position. Besides that, we now hear that Estonia wants to essentially block the exit of Russian ships from the Gulf of Finland. I am not sure if they will block the oil ships. This would be maybe problematic. But if they do, then this will be an incredible escalation of pressure to Russia. Because right now they're using the Baltic Sea to transfer that oil. And if the Baltic Sea is closed, they will have to essentially go around through the North Sea, which is just crazy. It's the crazy road to take to India. And as I said, there is no quick solutions. Russia is losing money. And I am really happy to hear that the pressure is mounting on Russia. And even Russia, if the war ends, remember that sanctions will not get lifted right away. So Russia is definitely down, is going down, down, and down only. Let's go now to the map update so I can tell you everything that's happening on a battlefield, and you'll see that on the battlefield the situation is pretty okay as well. Let us start as always from the north side and the direction around Svarova. Now, we know that Ukraine here is attacking from Novoselyevsk, that Ukraine captured, and we know that the idea was to get to Sosnowy over here, which is right above Svatove, the important logistics hubs. And basically the idea of Ukraine is to take this kind of chain of hills and have an oversight overhanging the Svatove. That's Ukrainian plan. So what have we heard? Kuzemivka was a village that was down from the Novoselivske. It was expected that Ukrainians would capture it, and they indeed made good progress. However, as I explained before, Russia had additional 100,000 troops in reserve that they were expecting to use during their offensive. However, either it seems that they are not going to be doing their offensive or they're going to be trying to do it right now, though so far nothing large scale is really happening on the battlefield. But we have seen that Russia has been reportedly sending in reinforcements into the area from those that were stationed and left in the Russian territory. They are now being sent to the direction of Kuzemivka. So while Ukrainians captured some part of the Kuzemivka village, after that the reinforcements came. So right now it might shift a bit. So, but we need to know that Russia, it's not happening just because. It's because Russia is sending additional reinforcements and they're essentially denying their offensive from happening. And the same is happening around Kremina direction. Here is a couple of things that I want to say. Firstly, we definitely know that Kremina direction is again reinforced with all new forces. Additionally, Russia has reinforced also forces in this area here. And we know because there was reports that Russian attacks towards the direction of Terny has been repelled. So they're trying to attack. And we also know that Russians are trying to counterattack in the forest area over here. However, there are also mixed reports about something that is happening in Shupilivka. Now, we know for a while that Ukrainians were stuck in Bilohorivka, defending Bilohorivka. However, recently something happened, like one of the Russian reporters, he was geolocated essentially being on the front lines and fighting around the north parts of Shupilivka village. It was about here. And that means either Ukrainians have already reached and fighting for Shupilivka, or some people are saying that it was just a fake out. But to be honest, I don't really believe that much in a fake out, maybe a theater, but overall, it's completely possible that Ukrainians have already reached Shupilivka and at least either counterattacking or fighting to distract Russians. But overall, fighting is still happening, but Russians are reinforcing this northern area with the troops that they were saving up for something, and now they're doing. So around north of Bakhmut, so Soledar, as I explained before, Russians were able to capture Soledar, and then they reached the western parts of Soledar here, and then they realized that it's a very unfavorable position, and they haven't been advancing west from there at all, because that's where the hill starts. And what's been only happening with Russians in the last couple of weeks here is they've been dying in droves. Like we've just seen video after video after video after video. I am always almost already recognizing some of the hills in the videos repeating themselves, that where the Russians just come in, the drones fly in, the artillery strikes, and that's it. So the only kind of Russian advances here was towards north, towards Krasnopilivka, but it's a very small kind of part of a settlement chain, and it was very hard to hold that. The key point here is obviously the Krasna Hora Paraskoviivka part. This is the gateway to the northern road that Russia really wants to cut. So far, all of the attacks towards these directions have been repelled, and these are holding these reinforcements. And then people say it's like, oh, Russia attacking east side of Bakhmut, but I already explained that attacking through the Bakhmut is pretty dumb pretty dumb. So Russians are mostly doing it just to tie up some of the forces of Ukrainians. And even if they're advancing, it's a very, 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 very unfavorable advance for the Russians. But I mean, they stopped caring about the dead bodies. Now, south part is complex. For a longer time, I've been telling you that Klishivka was very important for Ukrainians to hold, and people fairly said, Georgie, Russians have taken Klishivka. Well, not completely taken. The fighting is still going, but let's just agree. I'm going to take the negative perspective. Let's take Klishivka is taken. I'm not going to be so pedantic. So if the Klishivka is taken, why essentially haven't this collapsed the positions? Does this mean that things are happening? And I think a larger explanation here is in order. Klishivka by itself wasn't really the point. It was actually kind of the hills that are a little bit to the west of Klishivka. And I will explain why in a second. So Klishivka was a very important settlement. It was just the only settlement in the area, like a name tag that I would assign, like to defend. And I'm going to switch here to the topographic map just to kind of show you what I mean. So, and I'm going to enlarge it. So this here is Bakhmut. That's the city center of Bakhmut. And if we go south here, so this here is Klishivka. And Klishivka, as you can see, it's light green and blue. So that means that it's actually down. And the red one is actually the high ground. If I just quickly show you, so Klishivka here is elevation is 150 meters. Whereas on the high ground, the elevation is over 230 meters. So it's over 60 meters right above it. I will show here like a picture of how Klishivka look on when you just kind of look at it, and you see that the hills are kind of overlooking Klishivka. And it's not just that there are hills here on top to the west of Klishivka. I'm going to move to the Google Maps now, and today is going to be just a different maps galore. And I'm just going to zoom into Klishivka, zoom, 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 zoom. And you're like, well, that's a nice town. This is the town that basically Russians were trying to capture. And I'm going to zoom, and this is the edge of the town, the western edge. And here we go, western edge, and we see the hill. And you're asking, oh, Georgie, what is this? Well, my friends, this is a fortification. This is at the top of the hills. It's a multi-layered fortification. It's a chain of fortification areas where Ukrainians are holding. So the actual fortress of Klishivka, as you can see by Google Maps images that was just like available by the satellites, was actually here on top of the village. So the village itself was a nice kind of shield towards it, but the actual problem is for Russians to get on top of this hill and take over these fortifications. And if we go back to the deep state map, you can see that it's exactly where we're talking about. This is the Klishivka. This is the edge of the area. If we use the topographic map, we see that over here is the train line. And this train line is actually, in fact, where the hills start as well. So this is a hill line where the top of the hill is starting, where the climb is. And also, if you would look here, you would also see that from the south side, this is like where there's also a little bit of a advance towards the hill. But at this point here, approximately, is where the hill kind of evens out. And if you are in the fortification over here as Ukrainians, for example, I'm going to put it in blue just so we have, it's fortifications. So once Russians are essentially reaching this spot, you have a direct strike opportunity on them because the height is about the same. So all in all, we see that Russians have reached whatever they could in this fortification area, but the hardest part for them is still yet to come. Getting on top of that hill, getting above those 60 meters is going to be a big challenge for them, and this is exactly where the biggest problem for them really comes. However, I must say, as I always said, that once this is taken, then it's pretty much almost like a direct fight towards Ivanivske and cutting off. Oh, sorry, I should put this in red. So when they get just to Ivanivske, then they would be able to cut the road. So the last fortification until cutting the southern road for Bakhmut still holds. The last fortification that holding on the Bakhmut road for the north also holds. So it's a difficult situation, but not yet critical. And there are also additional roads leading to Bakhmut even besides these two. So even if these two roads are taken, the Bakhmut situation is not yet completely lost. But at that moment, I will say that Bakhmut should be evacuated probably. So can I say that the Bakhmut is fine? Yeah, Bakhmut is still fine. Until one of the roads is cut, Bakhmut is totally fine. Then we move a little bit south. So Russians are still trying to attack towards Avdiivka, but I'm not going to cover it again. It's mostly tactical movements, and some of them are repelled. A lot of people have been asking, what about the southern side? Does Russia really attack and gain some kind of momentum on the southern side? And the answer is not really, no. There has been a lot of propagandists that were saying that Russians are attacking towards Orikhiv, that Russians are attacking to Gulyapole, Novoselivska, that they are attacking towards Stepove, and none of those reports came true. All of the attacks, Ukrainian staff just reported that we repelled them. Then the videos came out of Russians just dying. It was interesting because it was the Russian army troops that were trying to do essentially trying to silly copy the Wagner tactics, but because they are not essentially prisoners that everyone just sending forward, a lot of them don't really want to do this tactics, so they're actually struggling to send, and there is also problems with the same tactics as the Wagner has using before. So they tried doing essentially the small group tactics that Wagner has been using, but the southern direction is a lot more open. There is not as many places to hide for people advancing, and this small group tactic does not work as well when you just don't have the hills or forest lines or places to hide. So all of these directions that Russian army tried to advance so far has been completely repelled. The only kind of settlement that people said Russia has captured was Lobkove, which is over here. And that one is interesting because on Deep State map, it was colored as essentially like as a gray zone or Russian or Ukrainian liberated. But many other maps were actually, and the ones that I followed, was considering that this village was actually taken by Russians for a while ago. So, and then they say, oh, we captured it. So either it's a village in a gray zone that Russian just said, okay, we're there now, and that means like as with any village in a gray zone, they just like become artillery targets, because gray zones are gray zones because every artillery essentially already zeroed in to key points in that area where the enemy would go. So they either just got pounded, or Russia at some point lost Lobkova to Ukrainians and then just were able to retake it. In any case, so far, there is a lot of noise about the southern part and southern movements of Russia, and the only thing we're seeing is just mostly dead Russians. Thank you so much for watching this. I am saying big thanks to all of the people that support this channel. You're amazing. I am unfortunately still experiencing issues with YouTube not providing any kind of ad revenue for my videos. I don't know what to do. I thought I had an idea, but things just doesn't work out. So that means that just less money will be able to be sent to Ukraine. But that's doesn't matter. I will still continue doing these updates and continue informing you about the situation in Ukraine. Slava Ukraini, my friends. I'll see you next time.